This video I'm going to be comparing two long-running franchises that put out a lot of movies, Frankenstein and Godzilla. The first Frankenstein movie came out back in 1931. The first Godzilla Japanese film came out back in 1954. Both of these are in black and white, and each of these franchises has put out over 20 movies. Now, I have seen Godzilla v. Kong: The New Empire, Godzilla v. Kong, Godzilla 2014, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla Minus One, which is separate from those four films I just mentioned, which are in the MonsterVerse, whereas Godzilla Minus One is a Japanese Godzilla film that's not in the MonsterVerse, plus also the 1954 black and white Godzilla movie. I haven't seen any of the others right now. In regards to Frankenstein, I've seen the original 1931 black and white movie, the first sequel to that one, Bride of Frankenstein, Lisa Frankenstein, that came out earlier on this year, which is not a traditional take on this story where you have a scientist that brings this abomination to life. This monster is created by Dr. Frankenstein. That's not the way the movie Lisa Frankenstein plays out. It's about this girl who doesn't really know how to fit in, is odd, eccentric, because other kids think that she's weird, and then this guy is brought back to life, and the two of them form a relationship. It's inherently the kind of movie that's not going to be for everyone. It's queer, it's quirky, weird, offbeat, it can be rather sexual, so it's not going to be for some people. I overall had a good time with it. I enjoyed it. I've also seen the movie Frankenweenie from Tim Burton, which is basically Frankenstein with a dog. I currently have not seen any of the other Frankenstein movies. Now, when it comes to the highest score for each franchise, in the case of Frankenstein, the highest score be a 98% actually for Bride of Frankenstein. In the case of Godzilla, the movie Godzilla versus Destroya, I think that's how you say it, I'm not 100% sure. That one actually has a 100%. Now, when you look at the lowest score, in the case of Frankenstein, the movie Frankenstein versus the Mummy only has an 11%. In the case of Godzilla, let's see here, lowest score would be a 25% for this movie called All Monsters Attack. So Godzilla wins here. And then when you look at average score, Frankenstein has an average of 55, while Godzilla has an average of 64. So Godzilla wins this round, meaning that Godzilla is ahead 2-1 right now. Then when you look at gap between lowest and highest score, in the case of Frankenstein, you have a gap of 87, pretty big. In the case of Godzilla, you have a gap of 75. Gap's a bit lower for Godzilla, so it wins this round, meaning that it's won 3 of the rounds, so it's going to win no matter what. Let's look at which franchise I prefer. Now, earlier on this year, I actually got to see Godzilla v. Kong: The New Empire in theaters. I certainly enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. Godzilla v. Kong is not the kind of movie that I take very seriously at all. I just write it off as dumb but fun, big budget fan fiction. It's enjoyable, but I know it's not great. Whereas Godzilla Minus One is just a fantastic movie that has a compelling story, characters that you're invested in. The acting is fantastic. It explores national identity, the way people respond to trauma. There's deep emotions in the movie. The visuals are fantastic. When the action happens, it's well done. I can't really think of anything wrong with the movie, to be honest. When it comes to Frankenstein, I like the original movie from 1931 as well as Bride of Frankenstein. They're both quite engaging. Inherently, this is a scary story, and while there are visual, technical aspects to those movies that haven't aged too well, as you can imagine, because it came out almost 100 years ago at this point, I think they look good overall. There's good acting in both of these movies. I like Frankenweenie. I'm sure the fact that everybody is so scared doesn't make as much sense in this context because, well, it's a dog. But overall, I thought the movie still worked. Yeah, I know Young Frankenstein is quite an iconic movie because it was made by Mel Brooks. I haven't seen that one. I would say that I prefer the I'd say the Frankenstein franchise. Honestly, it's more iconic, I would argue, because it comes from that story, the modern Prometheus from Mary Shelley. That book is definitely a classic. It's very iconic and memorable. The monster Frankenstein is just a part of, well, actually, to be more accurate, Frankenstein's monster is absolutely just a part of popular culture. Everybody knows this story, even if you haven't seen very many of the movies. That you even then you still know what Frankenstein is. Now, Godzilla is iconic for people in Japan, to be sure, but not quite as much for people living in America. Whereas I think the story of Frankenstein is iconic for people around the world or people from different countries. It's so well known. There's been a ton of films. I like basically all the ones that I actually have seen. Admittedly, when I think about the movie Poor Things that came out last year, which is a different take on the story of Frankenstein because it's about this woman being brought to life. That one doesn't really interest me because when I hear about it, it makes me go, ooh, yikes, that sounds really creepy and uncomfortable. That sounds very problematic when you have a baby's brain being put into the body of a fully grown woman. That means that you have someone who has the body of an adult woman but the mind of a child. So she has certain desires that her brain or mind is unable to comprehend. And she literally says in the movie itself, I don't really know exactly what's going on here. I don't really know how to critically think. So you're watching this lady go on this journey of discovering her sexuality, going on this journey of liberation, empowerment. And it's like, oh, yikes, you got someone who doesn't know what's going on, who isn't able to actually consent because she has the mind of a child. So you're basically watching someone get raped throughout the whole movie. Yikes, that isn't something I'm interested in at all. I know it has a really high score on Rotten Tomatoes, and it feels like, yeah, on a technical level, the film has merit, but ooh, man, I just don't want to see the movie because it's so problematic that makes me feel uncomfortable even just hearing it. But overall, though, I'm going to give the point to Frankenstein here. It's such an iconic, memorable, classic franchise. They'll wrap things up for this one.